In recent days, the British public has once again been stirred by a wave of rumors surrounding the relationship between King Charles and Queen Camilla. Once seen as the couple who overcame every storm to finally be together, their carefully crafted image of happiness now seems to be crumbling. Leaks suggest that the two frequently argue, even falling into a state of cold war within the proud walls of Buckingham Palace. These whispers are no longer confined to hushed corners. They have become the subject of heated discussions among the public and the press. The climax of all speculation came with a shocking revelation that has been widely shared. King Charles is said to have broken one of the royal family's strictest rules by openly criticizing Camilla. This is almost unprecedented, as the monarchy has long adhered to the principle of silence, avoiding any statements that might expose internal conflicts. The king's choice to voice his dissatisfaction publicly has left the nation stunned and ignited a storm of unanswered questions. Could it be that, after all, the relationship between Charles and Camilla is sustained only by duty, by the throne, and by the image they must project to the world? Or does there still exist a fragile thread of affection between them, stretched now to the breaking point? Do you believe their love is nearing its end? Or is this merely a performance to preserve power and status? Stay with me as we uncover the deeper truth, for what lies behind this story may be even more shocking than what we see on the surface. A regal frenzy. The banquet hall was glowing. Chandeliers shimmered overhead. Crystal glasses clinked softly, and royal courtiers mingled in tailored grace. Cameras panned over smiling dignitaries, unaware that history would soon shatter in real time. Just as the orchestra moved into a quiet crescendo, King Charles rose suddenly from his seat. There was no announcement, no cue, just silence. Deafening, eerie silence. All eyes turned as he stood tall, shoulders squared, and his eyes sharp and unyielding, locked onto Queen Camilla across the table. Her face flickered with confusion, maybe fear. She knew this look, but never before had it come in front of the world. Then came the blow. Cold, clear, royal. Camilla, in public and private, you've betrayed our values. The words weren't shouted, yet they rang out like a war bell across the hall. A collective gasp followed. Guests stopped mid-bite, mid-toast, mid-smile. Some turned pale. Others whispered nervously. But Queen Camilla, she froze. Her lips trembled. The grace and poise she was known for drained from her face. The stillness in the room was unbearable. A few guests dared to look away, unsure if what they were witnessing was real or some bizarre royal performance. But this was no performance. This was a sovereign breaking the golden rule of monarchy. Never bleed in public. The orchestra fell silent. Even the palace staff paused, unsure if they should continue with the next course or vanish altogether. It was the kind of moment that didn't just stop time, it rewrote it. This wasn't some fleeting flare of royal tension. This was something far more profound. For centuries, royalty had hidden its cracks behind velvet curtains and polished press releases. But now, in a glittering hall filled with cameras and power brokers, a king had just called out his queen in front of the entire world. Whispers spread like wildfire. Phones buzzed quietly under the tablecloths. A royal rupture was underway, and nothing, not protocol, not tradition, not crown, could stop it. Now, this single moment didn't just break the mood. It tore open an entirely new chapter of royal history. And as the cameras zoomed in, capturing Queen Camilla's stunned expression, the message was clear. The era of quiet palace diplomacy had just ended, and no one, not even royalty, would come out untouched. What led to this moment? Before the bombshell at the banquet, the signs were there if you knew where to look. Tension between King Charles and Queen Camilla had been brewing for some time. What looked like minor disagreements on the surface were behind palace walls, deep fractures threatening to crack the monarchy from within. It started with public messaging. Whispers from insiders revealed that Camilla had been quietly but forcefully guiding the tone of palace communications. Statements meant to reflect Charles's vision often came out sounding different, more polished, more strategic, less sincere. Rumors swirled that Camilla had overridden Charles on more than one key address, inserting her own spin into national broadcasts and charitable announcements. Behind the scenes, Charles was reportedly furious. He valued honesty, connection, a return to transparencies after decades of scandal and damage control. But according to Palace aides, Camilla saw things differently. She was a survivor of public scrutiny herself. In her eyes, image wasn't just important, it was survival. And so she took control. The cracks widened over public engagements. Camilla allegedly canceled or redirected appearances that clashed with her media strategy. Several events tied to Charles's core causes, climate advocacy, interfaith unity, and youth programs were quietly deprioritized. Camilla's preferred charities, in contrast, gained prominence. The imbalance didn't go unnoticed. Behind closed doors, Charles confronted her, but those conversations stayed private until now. The banquet was the moment the dam broke. After a period of tension, of whispers, of strained smiles, and subtle snubs, the king chose a very public stage to end the silence. And that one devastating sentence, "You've betrayed our values," was not spontaneous. It was the final verdict after a long, painful buildup. For royal watchers, the shock wasn't just the words, it was the setting. This wasn't a family spat behind palace doors. It was a state event filmed and broadcast. The decision to go public marked a complete collapse of royal protocol. In that moment, Charles made it clear. The old rules no longer applied. If the monarchy was to survive, it had to get real, even if that meant breaking itself first. The consequences weren't just personal, they were institutional. The curtain had been yanked back on a power struggle that most assumed was myth. But this was no rumor. This was the king exposing palace truth for all to see. And it was only just beginning. The first blow, public disapproval. The silence hadn't yet lifted when King Charles struck again, this time with receipts. He didn't speak with rage, but with something far more unsettling. Precision, calm, controlled, and calculated. He began listing moments, specific events, and press statements where he said Camilla had undermined him. "You undermined my sincerity with spin," he said, voice cutting through the hall like a blade. "You turned my messages into strategy sessions. You made my truth negotiable." Every word felt deliberate and devastating. He referenced a charity gala where Charles had planned to speak about environmental grief. The speech that went out, rewritten, softer, sanitized, the heart of it, cut. Camilla had insisted on public optimism. Royal aides later claimed Charles had wanted honesty. She overruled him. He moved to another example, a viral tweet about youth rehabilitation programs. Charles had personally penned it, but when it hit the palace's official social media, it had been lightened. The edge, the urgency, all erased. The result, it sounded generic. "A voice diluted is a vision denied." Charles said aloud, you could hear a pin drop. Camilla, seated and pale, blinked slowly. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came. Her signature poise was faltering. The room could feel it. The control she'd held for so long was slipping away. This wasn't criticism, it was confrontation, a public unraveling of influence and trust. Charles wasn't just accusing Camilla of overreach. He was accusing her of betrayal in plain sight, of twisting royal integrity for PR wins. And what made it so raw, so shattering, was that it wasn't a leak. It wasn't an anonymous source or a whisper in the tabloids. It was the king himself on the record saying what no one else dared to, even seasoned guests, diplomats, officials. Royals looked stunned. This wasn't royal drama. It was a king reasserting his power by naming his queen's deception, a sovereign striking down the notion that spin can ever replace sincerity, and it felt like history shifting, courtroom-style accountability. This wasn't just a confrontation, it was a reckoning. As the cameras rolled and the hall sat frozen, King Charles took on the role of judge, jury, and royal historian. What unfolded next felt less like a dinner speech and more like a courtroom trial. Only the jury was the entire world. He quoted from what insiders now call the Royal Compact, a private family agreement said to be known only to top-ranking members of the royal household. Few outside the palace had ever even heard of it, but Charles brought it to the surface with stunning authority. "I expected honesty at home," he said, voice unwavering. "Instead, I found manipulation." The statement rang out like a sentence passed. He wasn't raising his voice. That made it even more chilling. No shouting, no blame shifting, just a mute sovereign laying out facts, one violation after another, each one punctuated by the weight of royal expectation and personal betrayal. Camilla didn't argue. She didn't interrupt. She sat still, eyes wide, face unreadable, but her silence spoke volumes. Those who knew her well said they'd never seen her so quiet, so defenseless. This wasn't the Camilla known for holding her own in backroom deals and public relations wars. This was a woman caught off guard in her own palace armor. Courtiers watched in disbelief. Guests stole glances, unsure if they were witnessing personal pain or the recalibration of monarchy itself. The symbolism was unmistakable. The king invoking a secret code of honor in front of the world, turning centuries of behind-the-scenes discretion into open confrontation. It was royal accountability like never before. And perhaps the most staggering part, Charles made no effort to walk it back. No softening words, no reassurances to the crowd. He let the weight of the moment sit in the air unchallenged, as if daring the world to question his authority or the truth behind his words. In that moment, the crown didn't just sit on his head. It pulsed with force. It became a weapon, a mirror, a spotlight, and Queen Camilla. She sat in its glare, silent, still, invisibly shaken, breaking protocol. Royal protocol is sacred. It governs everything from curtsies and conversation to who speaks first and when. But tonight, Charles blew it to pieces. The monarchy runs on image, on decorum, on rituals so deeply embedded they feel like second skin. But when Charles turned toward Camilla and exposed their private rift, he did the unthinkable. He broke the invisible shield that protects the crown from raw emotion. Never before has a reigning monarch publicly criticized a spouse in such stark, unscripted fashion. Experts scrambled to find comparisons. There were none. This wasn't just unusual, it was unprecedented. "This is more Shakespeare than Sandringham," one stunned royal aide whispered to a journalist. Even longtime palace watchers were floored. The moment Charles addressed Camilla as both consort and culprit, the old order began to fracture, and it wasn't a slip of the tongue. This was a calculated rupture, a monarch tired of veils and illusions, choosing public truth over polished myth. Was it desperation? Was it a final plea for honesty within his own house? Or was it a signal to the world that the crown was finally ready to show its cracks? Either way, it marked a turning point. Because protocol isn't just about manners, it's about control. And Charles, he took control back with words no one expected from a king. Bold, personal, direct. What followed wasn't silence, but uncertainty. Would this become the new royal norm? Could monarchies survive transparency? Whatever comes next, one thing was clear. The old rules were dead, and nothing, no tiara, no tradition could stop the truth from storming the palace gates. Queen Camilla's reaction. When those words landed, Queen Camilla's world shifted. She froze, her posture stiff, eyes haunted, nostrils flaring like a startled deer. She had weathered storms before, but never one summoned by her husband in front of thousands. The emotional toll rippled across her features, tight lips, trembling hands, and a distant glimmer in her eyes. The room held no pity. Courtiers and ambassadors exchanged uneasy glances as Camilla struggled to maintain composure. "A queen undone," they whispered as tears welled and rolled down her cheeks. Cameras zoomed in, broadcasting her vulnerable moment globally, her image splitting centuries of composed royalty into fragments of raw human emotion. Her silence was striking. Instead of composing a rebuttal or reclaiming ground, she allowed the moment to exist. That silence spoke volumes. It was shock, confusion, perhaps even regret. Those close to her later described her demeanor as one of shattered dignity and, for once, not in control. But just as quickly as the moment began, it deepened. Courtiers murmured about her future. Advisors trembled at the implications, and the public watched transfixed. Was Camilla collapsing under pressure or preparing her next move? When she finally bowed her head, the tears were unmistakable, an image of heartbreak that stunned the monarchy into silence. This wasn't theatrics. It was anguish. A queen exposed on the world stage, stripped of the usual royal armor, and as the banquet resumed its rhythm, her fragile grace dominated the atmosphere. The crowd reacts. Shock didn't subside. It multiplied. Gazes darted around the hall, some grim, some sympathetic, others overtly shocked. Journalists falseroosted lenses. Diplomats froze mid-conversation. Monarchists cast pained looks. Republicans smirked under breath. In that moment, the banquet transformed into a public courtroom, and the crowd became participants in historic disruption. Phones buzzed, secretly belonging to guests eager to share this moment instantaneously. Whispered phrases spread within. Can you believe this? He actually did it. She's devastated. The banquet's rhythm shattered. No speech resumed. No toast continued with protocol abandoned. Human responses hovered in the air. Compassion, curiosity, critique. Outside on live broadcasts, anchor voices trembled with astonishment. We've never seen anything like this. A public rupture among royals across social media. Hashtags erupted. Our Shard King speaks. Truth surged while royal humiliation trended. Polls opened shortly after. Public sentiment divided between admiration for Charles's honesty and sympathy for Camilla's pain. This scene sparked more than palace gossip. Political analysts observed a paradigm shift. Monarchy, long insulated, now broadcasting real conflict. It was raw, unpredictable, human, and terrifying for an institution built on pageantry. With every camera flash and overheard whisper, the moment embedded itself deeper in collective memory. A banquet gown forgotten, replaced by millions of questions. What just happened? Where does this go from here? The crowd was no longer a passive backdrop. They were witnesses to a shift so profound it threatened the monarchy's narrative of unity, decorum, and mystique. By the time dinner resumed in strained silence, the room had transformed into a pressure cooker of intrigue. And as the guests rose to depart, no one was untouched. The public, like them, would soon judge, react, and decide the fate of monarchy in this new moment. Expert commentary. Shortly after, royal analysts, body language experts, and PR consultants descended on the event. The royal household described it as a seismic recalibration of palace dynamics. Body language specialists noted Charles's posture, upright, authoritative, and Camilla's collapsed shoulders and tremor, reading dominance and submission in real time. Media outlets debated endlessly. Some hailed Charles as courageous, calling him a monarch willing to strip away royal polish to reveal honesty. Others warned of reckless upheaval, accusing him of breaking sacred protocol and jeopardizing centuries of tradition. Constitutional scholars weighed in with caution. One prominent expert asked, is the monarchy ready to embrace transparency, or is this moment dangerously destabilizing? Another noted that public trust could be eroded if private disagreements become public spectacles, arguing that monarchy depends on mystique, not melodrama. PR consultants had mixed takes. Some praised the frankness, describing it as raw, relatable leadership. Others warned, once you allow public airing of marital discord, the palace door swings wide open to scrutiny, speculation, and potential chaos. Social media sentiment mattered, too. Moments like these, experts pointed out, don't stay domestic. One viral video clip garnered millions of views shortly after. and global audiences had already formed sidelines. Team Charles or Team Camilla? Polling firms reported surges in both respect for honesty and empathy for Camilla's pain. Traditional royal experts found themselves scrambling to contextualize. They reminded the public of Charles's devotion to causes like the environment and mental health, suggesting his public rebuke was crafted to protect legacy. Critics, however, said his actions were more alarm bell than defense mechanism, a signal that public truth was replacing private diplomacy. By night's end, commentary boiled down to two opposing narratives: a courageous modernization or a cathedral's collapse, and the broader debate had begun. Does monarchy gain relevance through radical honesty, or is it teetering toward institutional accident? The royal fallout begins. The next day, the palace was in full crisis. Advisors convened emergency briefings. PR teams rushed to craft statements. Orders came down. No rehearsed remarks. No spin-friendly messaging. The plan contained the damage, but the wound was already bleeding. Camilla vanished from engagements. Her calendar wiped clean. For a time, she stayed away from public duties, fueling speculation over her future. Palace insiders reported her state of mind as fragile, while others suggested this was strategic withdrawal. Charles, in contrast, resumed his duties with regained clarity. He was described as laser-focused, personally reviewing every press release. Spokespeople noted, "From now on, we speak only the truth of the moment." Every word was checked, measured, approved, and stripped of anything that smelled like spin. Palace aides restructured messaging teams. Old-school communications were dismissed. Younger staffers known for candor and digital fluency took over royal social media and public engagement. It was a wholesale shift in tone, and tone was the message. Meanwhile, courtiers feared ripple effects. Collaborations with charities were paused pending review. Upcoming announcements were scrapped or delayed. Plans for tours, media events, and public addresses were reassessed or canceled entirely. This hadn't just been drama. It was a declaration. The monarchy's public image would no longer be scripted, especially not behind closed doors. Public opinion splits. Shortly after, social sentiment revealed deep fractures. Online polls captured by leading outlets painted a divided nation. One poll found 45% supported Charles's honesty, praising his willingness to reveal palace truth. Another 42% expressed sympathy for Camilla, criticizing Charles's public rebuke as unnecessarily harsh and damaging to royal dignity. Social media exploded with hashtags. King Speaks Truth dominated trends while royal humiliation rose later. Influencers chimed in. One wrote, "Modern monarchy needs realness, not spin." While another questioned, what kind of unity is built on public shaming? Media coverage went global. European royal watchers dissected every gesture. American outlets framed it as the palace meltdown of the century. Asian press reflected curiosity and concern, intrigue about palace protocols, but also latent worry over stability at the top. Public spaces reflected the turmoil. Tea shop conversations in London, family dinners in Sydney, lunchtime debates in Tokyo. Everyone had taken a side. The monarchy's image, long protected by tradition, now wavered in the public mind. Many praised the rawness. Many mourned the breaking of decorum. And most wondered, what's next? As the dust settled, one truth remained. The royal brand had been cracked open for all to analyze. And now the world was watching. Camilla's side emerges. Silence is often louder than words. For a time, Queen Camilla said nothing. No press release, no statement, not a single public appearance. But behind those palace walls, the storm was raging. Sources close to the Queen revealed that Camilla was reeling, not just from the public humiliation, but from the sense of betrayal. Those who knew her best described a woman torn between heartbreak and calculation. She was grieving a rupture. Yes, but she was also plotting a response. Behind closed doors, Camilla began drafting a personal statement, one that reportedly walked the line between apology and assertion. Advisors urged caution, Some wanted her to release it immediately to reclaim control. Others begged her to wait, to let the emotion cool, to avoid making things worse. But Camilla, insiders say, was determined to speak in her own words. Not a press team's version, not a palace rewrite. She wanted the public to hear her truth, that she never meant to manipulate, only to protect, that her decisions were rooted in loyalty, not deception. She also knew the stakes. This wasn't just about saving face. It was about survival of her public image, her role, even her marriage. One misstep, and she'd go from consort to cautionary tale. There were whispers that Camilla was considering a televised address, something personal, controlled, dignified. The idea sent palace staff into a frenzy. Some feared it would backfire. Others believed it was the only way to reclaim dignity. One aide called the situation a slow-moving chess match between grief and strategy. Camilla wasn't looking for forgiveness. Not yet. She was seeking clarity. And for the first time in a while, she wasn't sure how the public would receive her. In the meantime, she stayed hidden, not from shame, but from the weight of expectation. When she finally emerged, it would not be as the queen who stood by the king. It would be as a woman standing alone, deciding how to confront a truth that shattered a kingdom. Long-term consequences. What began as a speech quickly turned into a signal. Across royal halls and political offices, Charles's public rebuke sent shockwaves. This wasn't just about a strained marriage anymore. It questioned the very future of the monarchy. Prince William and Prince Harry watched closely. For William, it was a front-row view of leadership under pressure. For Harry, a chilling echo of the palace pressures he'd escaped, but never forgotten. Inside the palace, whispers told of shifting loyalties. Advisors once loyal to Camilla went quiet. Charles had taken a stand. And just like that, the balance of power tipped. Charities linked to Camilla hit pause. Foreign dignitaries rescheduled. The palace's famously tight-lipped PR operation was suddenly swimming in a new unpredictable current. One ruled not by polish, but by emotion and truth. Some saw hope. Constitutional scholars asked if this could mark the start of a more transparent, accountable royal family, one that shows its flaws rather than hiding behind titles. Could this be the modernization so many had longed for? But others were uneasy. If the monarchy can't control its own household, how can it guide a nation? If royal quarrels go public, what stops the institution from unraveling? Still, one thing was clear. The rules had changed. And when change starts at the top, it spreads. Staffers, courtiers, even the public began trading talk of tradition for talk of truth. In this new era, vulnerability replaced perfection, and that shift, raw and risky, was still unfolding headline by headline. One decision at a time. The next chapter, the banquet was ending. Lights dimmed, conversations faded, and the last image left behind would haunt the monarchy for years. Camilla standing alone, eyes glistening. Charles, rigid, silent, sat across from her. The weight of the crown suddenly real. He had broken centuries of silence with just a few words. And now the world waited. Late-night coverage teased the fallout. Camilla's response, William's move. Palace shaken. The press churned with speculation. Would Camilla strike back? Would Charles walk back his statement or double down? And where did William stand, the heir to this increasingly turbulent throne? One thing was undeniable. The royal family was now fully exposed. No longer untouchable, no longer scripted, just people, flawed, fragile, and figuring it out on the world stage. As one commentator put it, this was never about just a marriage, but it's the monarchy unmasking itself. The public had more than scandal now. They had a question that wouldn't go away. Can a crown survive when its heart is laid bare? That's the real cliffhanger, because what's next isn't obvious. It's messy, unwritten, and the most human the monarchy has ever been. This moment won't be forgotten. With one sentence, King Charles ripped the mask off royal unity and left the world breathless. Will this shake the monarchy to its core or mark the beginning of brutal honesty at the palace? One thing's certain, the crown has never felt this fragile.